What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily podcast powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Like I said, the schedule's a little different this Thursday and Thursdays going forward. Doing a little quick segment at our normal 9 o'clock hour. I record a show with the coach of Miami Hurricanes baseball, JD Arteaga, and then we do this 10 o'clock show. You'll hear that interview, the first episode of the JD Arteaga show later on in this show. Also talking wide receiver, maybe Miami's best wide receiver room in years. I'm fired up. Pete, hop in. This is awesome, man. This is an awesome time of the year. Undefeated, 0-0, and on top of the world, man. I for some reason I'm feeling a lot of juice this week, even though it's not like there's a ton of action happening in terms of new news outside of recruiting.
I think that's all the pre-workout you're taking, D, because there ain't nothing going on right now.
Say right here. Thank you, Canes Connection, for the water bottle. Remember, canesconnection.com/CIS to make sure we're getting these great players. And yeah, got some pre-workout in it right now, man. We're ready to rock and roll. Talk some receivers.
Yeah, really good room. I mean, that's on paper. I think we'll talk about it here. Best room probably in years heading into the season. A lot of questions going into last year about that room. And I think with some of the additions you've made here with Malachi Toney, you didn't know what he was. You knew what he was because we saw it, but he wasn't established like he is now. And that's a whole different ball game when you talk about going into this spring with a group that, I mean, can really be like 8+ deep here in terms of guys who have the ability to play. Now, whether or not that's how the rotation plays out, we'll see.
And it's like we talked about last year with corners. We thought we had too many corners. Because remember, it was crazy. Going into spring, we had Emmanuel Carnley as well. Remember him? And we had Charles Brantley.
Carnley, who was rated higher than a lot of the guys.
He went back.
He was a highly rated. Yeah.
But you're right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. He was more highly rated. He just went back in the portal. He played for Virginia. Where did he end up signing? Oh, he's at the University of Washington now. So he's a guy that's been around and is a starting caliber type of corner. Like the most energized man in America. I'm feeling great right now. It's easier when your team is doing good. And maybe also, you know what also might be, Pete, as Philo Simon says right here, but will JoJo play? As the first wide receiver breakdown, we don't got to do the obligatory JoJo Trader clickbait.
Listen, we don't have to, but there is an opportunity. How will the Canes fare without JoJo Trader? Could be a phenomenal title for this video. You know, we can still utilize the name somehow.
I love it. But yeah, no, you said it. It could go with 8 guys that can play. We'll see how injuries and stuff play out. Obviously, you don't want anyone to get hurt. You want just competition, and that's what's going to be on Green Tree. That's a part of it too. Before we get into specific players, is Pete. Last year, you had Emory Williams at quarterback, Luke Nickel fresh off the boat. You know, he just got here, and then Judd Anderson is still developing, 2 young players. So you did not have Carson Beck getting chemistry with his receivers, kind of finding out who he likes, right? Kind of doing that whole thing, getting the ball to them accurately, consistently, the way a starting quarterback tends to do. This year, you got Mensa from day one, healthy, locked in, ready to throw. You have Luke Nickel, a year more experience. Darren Coleman, exciting young player who likes to throw the football. And then Judd Anderson, a year more experience. So I think the quarterback play is going to be a lot better in spring from 1 to 4. And that's in turn going to allow these receivers to really compete at every single level, not just the first teamers, and show what they got. And it's going to help the quarterbacks who aren't throwing to walk-ons, and it's going to help
the DBs.
Receivers. Yep.
Going to help the DBs too, because I mean, you're talking about, you have a lot of depth on that side too. And you have a lot of guys like even someone like a Ryan Mack that we haven't talked about a lot. And we mentioned him the other day as like a low-key portal keep there, the retention, that he's been banged up, he's been hurt, but he's got some ability. But when it comes to these receivers, you have Barcate's gotten a lot of this attention here because he's coming over with Mensa, but I'm a huge fan of both of the guys that they have coming in Cam Vaughn from West Virginia and Ventreas Jacobs from South Carolina, originally from Florida State. I think they both bring you something a little bit different to the table, but common theme that we've seen here with Miami and portal pickups is trying to find value in certain places. Those guys were not really like top 5 to top 10 receivers on the market, right? If you look at the rankings. But and I like Lenore Sellers. I know you do too, but the passing game consistency wasn't there at South Carolina. They also had a Nick Harbor, who is a big time weapon. But to me, same thing at West Virginia. Not a lot of consistency in the passing game. So you now put both of those guys. You're able to kind of realize that these guys are highly talented players, not in the best situations. What would that look like within this system, within this offense, when they're not going to really be the guys that are getting all the attention? I like their chances to have the best seasons of their career here at Miami.
No doubt. All different types of body types with those two, and then the guys we brought in terms of Barcade, the freshman. It's a different, like I've heard the people say your receiver room should be like a basketball team where you have different bodies, different skill sets at different positions. It seems like that's coming here in terms of Malachi does what he does. Get the ball in his hands. He can throw, he can catch, he can run, he can return. He can get open over the middle. He's a slot receiver. He can also stretch the field as well, as we saw against Florida State. He can do all those things. Mm-hmm. Running back type body type. Cooper Barcade, the craftsman, running routes, catching the ball with his hands every single time. Outside receiver, but somebody who wins with craft and with just really, really good route running. Is underrated speed, but really it's the whole package. Ventreas Jacobs from South Carolina, who we were talking about, 17-plus yards per catch, gets all the way down the field, gives you that deep threat that I think you lacked this year big time. And then Cam Vaughn, that C.J. Daniels type, lanky, catch it outside the frame, former quarterback from Georgia. So a lot of interesting pieces. We'll break them down one by one. Maybe we should start with Mally, but really, really, really excited.
Clutch, appreciate your support. Says we need a big body extra, replace Horton CJ role. Looking at more Wingo, Milan Paris. We have the smaller body types with Mally, Upshaw, and Coop. And I wouldn't even say Cooper Barcade's small. He's not tiny.
Neither's Upshaw, really.
Yeah, and Upshaw's not either.
Neither's Mally, really, in terms of his height is not tall, but he's big, strong.
Right. He plays strong. But I do, to his question here, yes, you need someone to step up. I think Cam Vaughn can be that with a little bit more upside.
100%. He's the one. So why don't we start there? Let's start with Cam Vaughn. I know everybody expects us to start with Malachi Toney, but let's take the segue while we got it and start with Cam Vaughn, because he's someone with all the excitement about Barcade, all the continued excitement about Malachi, all the freshmen, all that stuff. We are not talking enough. I know you are, P, because you've been really focused on this player and saying, hey, this guy can play. Cam Vaughn from West Virginia. So background on him, from a small town in Georgia, played quarterback, goes to Jacksonville State under Rich Rod, was their best receiver, then goes with Rich Rod to West Virginia. He's their best receiver. They can't really throw the ball, both because, Rich Rod's system's not exactly the most wide receiver friendly system, but more than that, their quarterbacks just weren't very good at the Big 12 level. But he made a ton of plays. You watch him, Houston, Utah, BYU, Arizona State, the good teams in the Big 12. That number one corner for Arizona State, I think, is an NFL player, Abney, and he was smoking them. So against the good teams, he was able to get down the field. Has that C.J. Daniels type frame. He just looks like him physically. I think C.J. Daniels played a little bit of quarterback too in high school, but he looks like that. Catches the ball outside his frame. Big hands, strong hands to just really pluck the ball. Not a body catcher in any way. Has more acceleration than I think people think. Can get down the field maybe a little bit faster with more juice than a C.J. Daniels. Can run after the catch. Highly productive. Plays with a lot of energy. Wants to be in a better passing game. He has that now at Miami. Can throw too. I keep saying he's a former quarterback. He threw, I forgot what game it was, but he threw a very nice pass down the field for a big, big gain. So, Malachi is not the only quarterback in that receiving room. I'm excited about this player, P. I don't know what you see as far as his potential.
Yeah, and one thing that C.J. Daniels did really well that I see just watching Vaughn's highlights is lots of first down conversions, lots of finishes at the first down marker, like a lot of routes, like yard or two in front of the first down that we saw. It was at Ole Miss game on that drive that he stretched to get the first down. So I see a lot of that with him here as well. I think CJ, I don't know. To me, it looks like CJ might be just a little naturally bigger.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
2 years older, so I think his weight room might have helped a little bit.
Right. Now, on the other side of it, though, with everything that we've said, Vaughn seems to have some more speed. So, yeah, I think body type wise, pretty good like for like there. And listen, if he can have the impact CJ Daniels had, we'll be very, very excited about it. But I think that he might have a little bit more explosiveness down the field.
Yeah, Clutch, again, appreciate all your support. Says, can Vaughn exceed CJ impact or closer to Sam Brown? He's closer to CJ, just in terms of the way he plays, the way he's going to be used. I think his level of talent. Sam Brown was a great athlete. You always heard great reviews about his athleticism. I remember Coach Sullivan, who was like a legendary wide receiver coach from the pros, a Miami Jackson grad, I believe, was basically
you know his son is the GM for the Dolphins now.
Oh, that's his son.
That's his son. Yeah,
makes sense. Also, he's back home, I guess, in a way. But his dad, Jerry Sullivan, I believe was his name, really, really famous receiver coach. He coached, Jefferson, Jamar Chase, all these guys Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, decades going back. He was a special assistant at practice in 24 because he lives in Miami. He's from Miami. And he was really high on Sam Brown. So I remember I took that. And I'm like, I'll be honest, I didn't see Sam Brown making a lot of plays in practice. I think he was banged up too. But when you hear a guy that knows what he's talking about to that degree.
And he was top 50 on a guy like Dane Brugler's preseason NFL list. And that's coming from that info's from scouts. So it's like he just did not perform for whatever reason.
And I think with Brown, the athleticism was always there, which is why you had all this excitement about him. I think people were like, well, if we just polish it a little, this athleticism, and he wasn't a small guy either, this athleticism and size is going to take him to another level. And it just never happened. I think with Vaughn, he is already a good receiver. Like, he makes a lot of plays outside his frame that I don't know if Sam Brown made consistently. And he also has upside because I keep saying it, I'm a broken record, but this was not a guy that played like at Matter Day, getting coached up a receiver every day. He was in a small town, kind of a do-it-all player. Now he's gone to two basically running teams in Jacksonville State and West Virginia. He hasn't been that guy that is getting developed in that way.
Great comment from Manny here. He says, I was watching Cam Vaughn highlights yesterday. He had like 3 quarterbacks throwing ducks to him. He can definitely take it over the top with Mensa.
Adjusting to the ball, unfortunately, you got to see that with him last year, is how he adjusted the ball, because it wasn't a straight shot there with some of the passes. But he can do it, man. Strong hands. That's the big takeaway I had, is like, this guy will go over the top of people and just pluck the ball away from him in a way that you cannot do unless your eye-hand coordination is excellent, your catch radius and length is good, and you have just those strong hands to grab the ball, not just catch it, but really pluck it and control it. So he's an exciting player. To me, a true X receiver and a one-for-one replacement with CJ Daniels. The character stuff, CJ Daniels was such an A+. And you mentioned the play against Ole Miss, which is like the perfect example of what he does on top of all the other plays he made. I don't know if Cam Vaughn's that, because I've not met Cam Vaughn. I've not been around him. I don't know how he gets down. But in terms of just the athletic skill set, I do think he has a little bit more of an edge with his explosiveness.
Yeah, no, I'm a believer in him big time. And I just think that, I don't know, even before Barkate came in, people wanted, I want Cam Coleman. You want that top, and we've talked about it. Malachi's getting paid like a top 3 to 5 receiver in the country as he is. But, we've had these big dreams of Jeremiah Smith and all of that. So people were, I would say, a little bit underwhelmed. And then you end up saying, well, not only do you have Cam Vaughn coming in, but Jacobs. And Jacobs, you're talking about a guy who, from Florida, went to Florida State his first year. And it's funny, because not only you, but we have been looking for that consistent, legit deep threat for a couple years. You didn't have it with Cam Ward either, because those guys just didn't. Sam Brown, hypothetically, you were looking at him to be that guy. And as we just said, it just didn't materialize. So when you're looking at Jacobs, can he finally be that answer? I'm a huge fan of his, as Josh says here.
Yeah, I'm a fan as well. Everything you hear about Ventreas Jacobs when you talk to other people who've been around him, it's what you want to hear. So South Carolina, which is where he was. He's at Florida State first. Let's just kind of go through the story. Vero Beach kid. Vero Beach, a really, really good program here in Florida. Not, I guess, South Florida, but right on top of South Florida, right? What you call it, Treasure Coast, Vero Beach. And so it's not South Florida, Palm Beach, Broward, Dade, for those who don't live in Florida, but it's closer. It's right on top, right? You have some really good players out of there. I think the last player Miami got out of there was Pat Bethel, I believe, was the last one we got from that high school, but a good high school. They throw the ball a lot. He goes to Florida State. His first year, they have Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, all those guys, and Jordan Travis, a quarterback. Number one team in the ACC that year. That was the year that they went undefeated and lost to Georgia in the bowl, to Carson Beck and all those guys, with everybody opting out. But that year, he didn't play because they had top receivers in front of him, and he was kind of down on the depth chart. Transfers to South Carolina after that, has a good first season with Lenore Sellers. Last year, really emerges as their top deep threat. 17 yards a catch, 548 yards total, 4 touchdowns, the longest 74. As they mentioned here in the comments from Kyle. Unbelievable game against Clemson. One of the best catches you'll see from a Miami receiver or receiver on this roster. Goes up top, lands on his feet, keeps his balance, explodes, and scores a long touchdown. Also had long touchdowns against Texas A&M, and their top corner, Will Lee, who's going to the NFL, beat Missouri multiple times down the field. This is an explosive player, as that 17 yards per catch suggests. What I like about this guy, first of all, he's not that small for a deep threat. He's 6 foot 182. He looks pretty strong when you see him. He doesn't look like a lean kind of guy that just blows in the wind and falls over. He's got some sturdiness to him. But Pete, you watch his highlights. He's got a C on his chest in some of those highlights. Mm-hmm. When he transferred, a lot of times when players transfer, you see the team that loses him say, "Oh, we don't want him anyways. Our team sucked." He was part of it. I remember him loafing on this and that, whatever. When Jacobs left, those South Carolina boards were not happy at all. And I heard their coaches were not happy at all. Some people thought he was better than Nick Harbor, who's the more highly touted of those South Carolina receivers. They loved this guy, and he has a rep. I believe Coach Beamer said all he does is work. He has a rep for hard work, getting better. I talked to somebody who coached against him when he was at Vero Beach in high school, said that this guy he had coached against Hakeem Williams and Jacobs. And he said Jacobs was the better player, more competitive. Just the want to and the compete factor was higher with Jacobs. So when you're bringing in people to a crowded room like this, and you bring them into a room that last year was one of the more high character rooms on the entire team. I mean, Daniels, Keelan Marion, Toney. I mean, these were super high character players. Bringing a guy like that who has that, plus the ability to get 17 plus yards to catch in the SEC, I think it's a perfect fit.
And let's remember something with both him and Cam Vaughn, right? We've talked about it the last few years. When did they make their decision, D? When did they commit and sign to Miami? Before they had a quarterback. And we both know that Miami did not have that Mensa thing done when those guys committed, or even like that would they were working through so many different options at that point that I don't know that Mensa was necessarily even like a thought at that point. So for them to commit, a guy like Jacobs to commit to Miami and believe in what was being sold to him and the development that was being sold to him, because they did it really on blind faith. And it's hard to say it's blind because you've now seen it the last couple of years. This is what our point has been. But he knew who his quarterback was going to be at South Carolina.
Yeah.
And he decided to come here. So I give those guys credit from... Listen, Cam Vaughn was probably thinking, whatever I get in Miami is going to be better than what I've been dealing with here. But Jacobs knew who his quarterback was.
Yeah, and someone we maybe would have tried to get if he jumped in the portal. So it's interesting how it all works out. I think they at one point probably thought that Sam Levitt was going to be the quarterback. I think Levitt was on the visit with maybe Vaughn. Levitt was on the visit with some of these guys, or just came right after them. I think they're much better shape with Mensa. Forget the character stuff. Just from a football standpoint, Mensa 3,900 yards last year. Cam Ward in a similar type of attack, 4,200 yards. I think you can get Mensa to that level. And if you get 4,200 yards, you're going to be feeding a lot of players. You look at the year that Cam Ward had. Restrepo was a first-team All-America, so he obviously got his. George had a good, productive season. Isaiah Horton had a good season that allowed him to go to the portal and get a lot of money. Elijah Arroyo was one of the more prolific tight ends in the country that year. Even people thought we should have used him more. He still caught a lot of passes. Sam Brown, less so, but still caught some passes. So you were able to feed a lot of guys with Cam Ward at quarterback running this offense. And I think with Mensa, he's that kind of guy that's going to put up just big numbers passing and allow a lot of these guys to catch the ball in the way that they're better suited to. Cam Vaughn up top, go get it. Ventreas Jacobs out in front, go get it.
Yeah, so those two, I wanted to start with those two, D, because I think they've flown more under the radar than they should have at this point. And spring this is why we're so excited for spring, because we got so many new faces. But guys like them they came here, but it's not like their position is set or anything. There's a lot of talent in that room. So they're going to be fighting for those opportunities. So that's what's going to make this spring fun.
Absolutely. Look, we waited too long. We got to talk about Malachi. Flanker tonight X says, need the Malachi song before we talk about him. I'm going to put it as a separate segment from yesterday's show by popular demand. We'll get that Malachi is King song written by me and AI and Waylon Jennings on a segment. But yeah, Malachi Toney, Pete. It's funny. We've been waiting for that number. Everybody says we need that number one receiver, man. We need that Amari Cooper. We need that Calvin Ridley. We need that Riley Ridley. We need that Jerry Jeudy. Like all the guys that left that were like, this is going to be the guy. And it never happened. And then it happens, and it's not in the package that everybody thought it might be, where it looks like a Jeremiah Smith, right? It's a guy that maybe people projected as a best case, he's a faster Restrepo, which is a good best case, but no one thought we were talking about a guy that everybody would be saying across the country by the end of the year, this guy's a legit elite player, period, in the country. Easily a top 5 player in the country heading into 2026. We were the biggest hypers of him in summer camp. I got to say, we were on here, this show, every day in August, Pete, saying Malachi Toney is going to be the star of this team. Don't sleep on Malachi Toney. I said he'd be the leading receiver. People were like, what? They were still kind of fixated on some other players. And it wasn't because it was.
We both at different times of the year hit his numbers on for a game right on the head.
Both of us, yeah.
I got it for the Notre Dame game, that was
a good one. It was a high number. Yeah, you hit that one. Those were both. We did little shorts on bragging on those. And it wasn't because we were clairvoyant. I mean, we knew because every day at practice, the guy was doing exactly what he did on the field. Probably the one thing I'll say about Mally, I'll say a lot of things about Mally, but the thing I think people need to know about him, he is the most consistent player in the program. And that doesn't mean just Saturdays. It means every workout, weight room, practice, scrimmage, spring game, the games, the meeting rooms, the time off when he could be out there partying. He's the most consistent player in the program. And because he is so consistent, I have zero fear of some sort of like sophomore slump unless injury or something weird. But the way this guy prepares and the way he does everything possible to put himself in a position to play and perform, I have zero worries about a sophomore slump other than just a random injury.
Or, I mean, look, his numbers were great last year. There's going to be maybe more people to feed around him. I think the offense will maybe operate at a different pace. So that may not matter, right, D? But the fact that you still also have the running backs also, who knows? Maybe his numbers aren't identical, but I don't think that there's going to be any sort of drop off from what you see when he's out there performing.
I'm with you. Clutch, appreciate your support. Says, with no spring portal, do we get more access and coverage to spring games, not only here, but countrywide? I was thinking about this. I don't know. I hope so. Malachi killed in the spring game this last year, but you couldn't see it, but he was the star of that game. The thing I would say with Mally and this expanded receiving core, he wants to win a Heisman. He wants to win a championship. He's team guy to the bone. I'm sure he wants to produce and have the ball in his hands. I hope, and this kind of goes for Fletcher too, but especially for Mally, high impact touches as opposed to high volume.
Right.
You have so many guys that can do it, do different things. I want Mally, from a stat perspective, throw a touchdown, run for a touchdown, return a touchdown, catch a touchdown, which I think can be easily done. He had it all except for the return this year, and he was a shoelace away from doing it. Just a fingertip tackle there in the Texas A&M game. Because that means high impact touches as opposed to I believe he led the nation in receptions this year as a true freshman. So that might go down because you need to spread the ball.
That's what I'm saying.
But I think the impact could be higher. Let me just pull up his stats here as I read them. And remember, this is slightly inflated because Miami played 16 games, but obviously it's not that inflated. I mean, he is that guy. So just looking at his stats, 11.1 yards per catch, 1,200 yards, 109 touchdowns, or 109 catches, 10 touchdowns. One thing about Restrepo that people I think underestimated with Restrepo, Pete, Restrepo averaged 16 plus yards a catch. So Restrepo, you don't think of him as explosive because he's not
actually running fast with the ball in his hands. Yes.
He's a 4A guy, but his production was with Cam Ward at quarterback was extremely explosive. It wasn't just short pass, short pass, short pass. Go watch those highlights of Restrepo with Ward. He was getting everything down the field. So if he's 16 yards a catch in the same offense, Malachi Toney's 11 yards a catch, albeit leading the nation in receptions, I think you could see that yards per catch go up with Mally as he just gets more impactful touches, and you're not focused on him like you were last year after FSU. You have to worry about Jacobs running by you, or Vaughn, or Cooper Barcade, of course. So with Mally, I like to see maybe the volume go down, the yards per catch go up, and yards per rush go up. He had 23 carries, 4.9 yards an attempt. Maybe get that up to 6, 7, right? That range. So I've heard Percy Harvin comps a lot with Mally. I think the Percy Harvin comps are very accurate when it comes to Percy Harvin, the running back
usage. Oh,
yeah, usage, the running back. I think receiving wise, and I have all the respect in the world for Percy Harvin. He might even be a little faster than Mally, but in terms of receiver, I think Malachi is a much better receiver than Percy Harvin. Now, what I just said about the running game, Malachi Toney averaged 4.9 yards a carry. Look at Percy Harvin's rushing numbers: 428 yards, 10.4 yards per attempt as a freshman, 764 yards, 9.2 yards per rush as a sophomore, 660 yards, 9.4 rush per rush as a junior, 10 touchdowns as a junior. So Percy was much more explosive statistically on his carries than Mally was, and Restrepo was much more explosive on his catches as a senior than Mally was as a freshman. I think you see both of those numbers go up as the usage goes down. That's what I'm hoping for with him.
Yeah, I agree. And you want to keep him fresh. He didn't have an issue this year. We played into the very last game and he was fine. But yeah, you want to keep it that way. So,
and look, a Heisman could happen. I mean, there's going to be a topic of discussion. Mensa, to me, is a safer Heisman bet just because, again, Mensa gets the privilege of throwing to Mally, Barcade, Vaughn, Jacobs. We'll talk about Josh Moore and these other guys as well.
There's a comment that I think you're going to want to address here. BSA says, we never gave Restrepo the proper respect he deserves. That we're picking and choosing with Malachi. So I don't know. You may want to enlighten BSA about your.
I'll enlighten him. The first time I've ever been accused of underplaying Restrepo, I've been hyping Restrepo since he was in high school. I love Restrepo. In fact, I always point out exactly what we just talked about, that his yards per catch was a lot higher than people remember because they focus on the 40. They don't realize this guy was a big play receiver. But if we're talking about Mally, I think the big difference between Mally and Restrepo, Mally's faster, but I think the real big difference is Mally's a lot better with the ball in his hands than Restrepo. Restrepo wasn't a punt returner. You weren't really handing the ball off to Restrepo. He had the strength to do it, but I don't think he had the balance and just mobility that Mally has running with the ball. So I do think Restrepo's a first-team All-America. Malachi, it might be a Heisman. You're talking about two elite college football players. Mally, though, probably does a little bit more, but man, I'm the biggest Restrepo fan on the planet. That's the first time I've been accused of that one. But
yeah, I don't know. You've been accused of overrating him.
That's right.
Oh.
But yeah, Malachi's great. But now, look, he's not the only 1,000-yard receiver on this team next year, Pete, in terms of coming back.
Cooper Barkay, baby.
You had one of the moments of the year in CanesInSight when you did that little midnight shimmy.
And I'm not going to try to recreate that one.
Yeah, we were delirious, man. That was So for those who don't know,
honestly, you called me and said you were going live, and at first I was like, man, I'm tucked in bed, man. I'm not going to do it, and then I was like, screw it, I'm coming.
So we had heard some rumors that Cooper Barkay might have been entering the portal. From people around Duke, around college football. They said, hey, we're hearing, they were calling me as, what are you hearing on Barkay? So I was kind of watching that portal. UM was quiet because, as you can imagine, this is a tight-lipped deal. As it gets closer to that portal period clicking, you wait for that midnight, which is like literally the last second for them to process it. Boom, right at 11:58 or something like that. Barkay's in the portal. I call Pete. He's in bed. We go and do a live show. Pete recreates some of the shimmies and Spidey dances that Cooper was doing, but he doesn't move like most, as Pete said. It's hard to replicate those dances. I think they call him. I figured it out now. I think the reason it's a Spidey celebration is because he looks like Peter Parker. He looks like Spider-Man, like without the costume. He has like the same haircut and everything. Although a lot of people compare.
I wouldn't know. People used to call me Peter Parker, and I didn't know what that meant.
Well, now you know. I always thought it was funny how people were. There was a tweet that got pretty good traction on Twitter where someone said that I was joining the wide receiver corps. I guess they were saying that me and Barkay look similar. Is it just the hair? Like, are we the only two people with like this haircut in Miami, Florida? Because
you're gonna have to ask the people who made the comparison, man.
Seriously, I gotta get back to it's the winter, so maybe my tan is not as pronounced as it is in June, but yeah, that was funny. I hope so, man. That guy's a stud. The guy's with 22, so he's about to take over Miami. But focusing on the player, Pete, over 1,000 yards, top 10 in the country in receptions. Clearly was Mensa's safety blanket. We talked to Brooks Austin, the film guy, who has an awesome channel. If you're not subscribed to that one, you can check out the segment on our channel. The film guy, Brooks Austin, breaks down players across the country. One of the things he said as he does the Mensa breakdown, this is the guy who's in Georgia. He's not a Miami fan. He was doing the Mensa breakdown, watching the coaches tape, and he's like, man, the amount of trust that Mensa has in Barkay is insane. This guy throwing it to a spot. He is very much trusting that this guy's going to be there, make the play on some dangerous throws over the middle, high leverage situations. So just a huge, huge addition for Mensa and for the team to bring a guy like Barkay over. And
people are going to try to put him in that box, right, of being a white slot receiver, right? He's, like I just said earlier, he's bigger than people realize. And he's a guy who is, as Bagging Up also pointed out in the comments, like he's a run after the catch sort of guy. So is he a deep threat for you? I don't necessarily think so, but I think in that intermediate game, he's going to rack up some big time numbers.
And he was another one. I think he was 15 plus yards per catch. So he was not a guy that was just short catch. He was getting down the field. What I think he's not slow. I would say he's probably in that 4.5 range, maybe even a high 4.4. But what I think allows him to play even faster than that is he catches the ball so neatly with his hands. We talked about this with Vaughn Richards. He's so good catching the ball with his hands that he does not need to gear down and slow down. He's catching that thing, boom, and he's moving full speed. You see the Rams receivers do it like that too. These really good hands catchers. It allows them to play faster than they are because they're not slowing down to catch that ball. They're just total trust in their hands as they get upfield. So, I mean, Pete, before we get to these young guys, and we'll talk about some of our friends in a second, but before we get to these young players, what are your expectations for Barkay from like a production standpoint? Is he the number 2 receiver on this team statistically, you think? Number 1?
I think probably just because of the previous connection. You have to keep that into account. They've already had 1,000-yard season together. And now you're going to give him better protection. And I don't know if it'll be 1,000 yards. I don't know what those numbers look like, but because you could have Mally as the leading receiver over 1,000, and then you could have Barkate 850, 900, Cam Vaughn and Jacobs 600-700. I don't know how the ball is gonna get spread around, but to me, he's the number 2 guy. Yeah.
It's going to be fun to watch. A really cool story. I'll just end with this on Barkate. Ari Wasserman, who's now with On3, he was at The Athletic in 2021. So, I mean, think about how long ago that was. He wrote a story about a high school senior, who at that time I believe was at Matter Day over there in California. He's from Orange County originally, is Cooper Barkate. Same town, Mission Viejo, as Van Spafford, by the way, who we'll talk about. But the story was about how Barkate, coming out of high school, this was as he was coming out, had a ton of opportunities to play Power 4. I think at that time it was Power 5 football. They interviewed like people in personnel departments of these colleges, and they were saying, yeah, this guy's a real Power 5 player. Like, this guy's a guy. He's not an Ivy League player in terms of his talent. But he chose to go to Harvard, and he said right there, this is 2021, he's like, look, I'm going to go to Harvard. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to get my degree, Harvard degree. Then I'm going to transfer to a bigger school. Then I'm going to go pro. Like, just like that. And it's exactly what he did. Last anecdote on him, which blew my mind. It was amazing. I think we talked about this, Pete. His dad took him to a baseball game, MLB game. They're sitting there watching the game. I'm guessing it was the Anaheim Angels or something. Maybe it was Dodgers. And he's sitting there watching the game, and he asked Barkate, who was like 10, he's like, hey, what's the best job on this field right now? And Barkate pointed to the pitcher. He's like, I like the pitcher. You get the pitch, control the game, right? You get the ball in your hands. And the dad goes, no, that's the best job. And he pointed to the owner's box, kind of saying like, look, play sports, do the best you can, but you got some big dreams. So different kind of cat coming to Miami, and really, really excited to what he can bring. And, somebody, Harvard-educated person like that, they're living a classy lifestyle. And if you want a classy lifestyle while also supporting the Canes, how about our friends at Zonin Prosecco? Again, this is an Italian company, one of the just long-standing, highly acclaimed wine companies out of Italy. The Zonin family has a huge, huge history there in Italy. Very, very respected. Over 200 years of winemaking heritage. And they brought it to the United States. Our guy, Rob, huge CanesInSight fan, huge Canes fan in general. He's helping spread this all across the United States. You're talking about nationwide, all over the country, wherever you're listening. But if you're in South Florida, Publix, Milam's, all those kind of places, ABC Fine Wine and Spirits, Jensen Liquors, Total Wine, and more. Even for your top restaurants like the Motex of the world, Olive Garden, like a chain like that, Fountain Blue from, again, all types of places, they have Zonin. So go in there, grab some Prosecco for you and the wife, you and the girlfriend, or you're just yourself. Ask for it if they don't have it, and just support a great Cane fan in Rob, who's doing some big, big things. So shout out to Zonin Prosecco, awarded Best Buy by Wine Enthusiasts, 90+ points from James Suckling. So this is highly acclaimed, while at the same time affordable wine, and you can support the Canes. What's better? Shout out to our friends at Zonin. And we're about to bring on JD Arteaga here at the end of our wide receiver segment. One of JT's best buddies, and somebody who is the best buddy of many people trying to get their landscaping in order. That is the OrchidMan, ORCHID man, Florida.com. From Palm Beach all the way down to the Florida Keys. South Florida's landscape artisan, 786-271-0332. 10% off your first service for a limited time only. All the stuff you don't want to think about when it comes to your residential or commercial property. It's not just the pretty stuff, although you'll get that taken care of as well, but the day-to-day grind, the maintenance, irrigation, hurricane prep, tree stump grinding, they will take care of you. They'll be your quarterback for the whole operation. OrchidMan Florida, ORCHID man, Florida.com. A lot of young players to talk about here, Pete, at the receiver position, but some of these guys we saw last year. That wide receiver class of 2025, we were talking about it throughout spring, throughout camp, not just Malachi. We both said this is a very talented room. There's a lot of players here. All three of these guys we think can play. In terms of the 25 players, obviously Malachi was the front of the room, but he wasn't the only one, Pete. The other two are going to have their say in this wide receiver battle.
Josh Moore, man, we'll start with him. And he is someone that in the 25, 30 minutes of practice, I was able to watch every day in fall camp. And it's not really fall, it's summer camp still.
Yeah, I don't know why they call it fall. They call it fall camp. It's in August. Why do they call it fall?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when that fall officially begins, but it's definitely not in August down here.
Not in Miami either.
Yeah, so that's funny. But he was making some eye-popping catches. I mean, mossing guys. We saw that in the USF game. He scored another one there on the crossing route near the goal line. So he, like, in terms of height, weight, speed, he's got all of that. He's got every last piece of it. I mean, talking to someone during camp inside last year, what they said is his flashes are incredible. We need to get him consistent. And I think that's ultimately what we saw play out over the course of this season, D, because you even look at the game, the championship game, he gets the screen pass. He has guys in front of him. He maybe could have taken that 30, 40 plus yards for a touchdown. And he kind of tripped over himself, right? He had a nice catch in the game against Ole Miss. He was kind of a ball thrown behind him. It was a beautiful play, right? And you see him using his hands to make the catch, kind of contorting behind him. So you saw a lot of the flashes this year. It's about making the plays every single down, even if the ball's not coming his way.
You know, I like this comparison here from our guy, Josh Sarnoff, asking, can he be like how Devontae Parker was at Louisville? I like that comp, man. So I'm just pulling up his college stats for Devontae Parker, because if I recall, he was a little bit of a slow burn. So, yeah, you look at him, 18 catches as a freshman. That jumps to 40 catches and 10 touchdowns as a sophomore. And then as a junior, 12 touchdowns. So, I mean, it was kind of every year his stats went up and up and up until his senior year, ended up being a first-round pick of the Miami Dolphins. So I like that comp. I hadn't thought about that comp, Pete, of Devontae Parker for a Josh Moore. I could see that. I don't know what you think on that.
Ron Dugan's product. Or was
That's
that
right.
Lamar Thomas? Or was it Lamar Thomas? I forget. No, it might have been Lamar Thomas.
But it might have been Lamar.
It might have. I think Lamar might have recruited him and coached him, and then Dugan's was getting some credit for that when we hired him. I remember.
Well, all I know is that the guy was a really, really good player. I think an underrated player as well in high school, but developed. So you hope to see that from Josh Moore. This is a huge year. Of all the guys that we're talking about, I think the guy that has, I don't say he's under the most pressure. Pressure is the wrong word. He's got 3 years left to do what he needs to do, plus beyond that. But in terms of like who I'm watching the close to see how they react to all the new guys, to me it's Josh Moore, because Cam Vaughn's going to be a direct competition with him. You have this comment from Gio Kane said that Josh Moore liked his comment on X when he said he should be used more on jump balls and back shoulder throws. Mensa will throw those. Cam Vaughn is going to compete for those. CJ Daniels did a lot this year. Cam Vaughn's coming to do a lot of that this year. Coming up is Josh Moore going to be able to take that role and seize that role over Cam Vaughn. And they're both going to be successful, right? It's not a zero-sum game necessarily. Both guys can play. We're going to throw a lot of footballs, but I'm interested to see how that battle goes starting in spring, because you're going to have Mensa there. You're going to have Moore there. You're going to have Cam Vaughn there. Mensa doesn't know either of them, really. It's not like Cooper Barcade. He didn't know these guys, so he's going to be out there trying to see who's going to be most reliable when he throws it in the area, who's had the best catch radius. That's going to be a very interesting battle when you talk about Josh Moore and Cam Vaughn starting spring, really starting right now, going all the way through.
How about Dalen Upshaw, D? Someone that you were very high on, even going back to last spring when we were doing a lot of the stuff about Malachi. You were like, Josh Moore as well, but Upshaw kind of flew a bit under the radar, I think, at that point, because he was an out-of-state guy. He was, the speed to me is a separator for him, but he was I would say a little bit slight coming in, not super small, but needed to put the necessary weight on. So how do you assess him now going into year two? I'm a huge fan.
Me too. I think he might have been one of those guys sleeping in the facility when Keontae Scott and those guys were doing that. He's one of those kind of guys. You saw him really take off towards the end of the year, had the big catch and run against Syracuse, which I think ignited I don't want to overstate it and say it ignited the season, but Pete, going to that Syracuse game, and we started off really slow coming off the SMU loss, the building was dead. The group chats were toxic. It was not a good vibe. He hits that long catch and run. Miami starts scoring after that, like immediately after that. They cover that game, and then they had the rest of their November, which was spectacular. We know what happened in the playoffs. So I'm not saying that sparked it all. I will say that was kind of the first play post SMU of that run. Would that be an overstatement to say? Because I'm trying to remember it in context, Pete, and you were there. You watched those games. Like the group chats were toxic because it was.
Well, I wouldn't. I don't know what goes on in the group chats. I've been kicked out of all the Canes related group chats because I bring realistic views on situations. But anywhoomst. I don't know what you're asking me because I don't know what's going on in the group chats.
Do you remember? Forget the group chats. Do you remember that timing when it was we had just lost SMU? Then the first game after that was Syracuse at home, and like we start off really slow. Offense is stuck in the mud. I think Syracuse might have scored early, and then they threw that screen pass to Dalen Upshaw, which he took for 40-something yards. And then after that, I think that might have been the drive where we scored on the throwback to Carson Beck. It was like that was the igniter for what ended up being a good Syracuse game where we scored a ton of points and covered, had all those trick plays. That was followed by, I believe, NC State, which was the best game probably top to bottom they played all year. Then Virginia Tech and Pitt in the playoffs. So it's like that was a big play. It didn't seem like it at the time, but I think Dalen Upshaw started to come on there. Had a big play against Virginia Tech, a big third down. Had another.
And how many guys on the roster could have made that play? D. Malachi?
No, yeah, that's it. He's really good on screens and things like that, short area stuff. You see it in his high school tape. You saw it here, and I think he's a good route runner, and I think he's gotten stronger. And he's a hard worker. So I think he's got one of the best all around games of all these guys. Whereas he's not a specialist in any way, but he's good at everything. Reminds me of like an Allen Hurns type. It's just, what would you call Allen Hurns? You wouldn't say he's a deep threat, but he caught a lot of deep balls in Miami. Wouldn't say he's a screen threat, but he could catch and run. He was good after the catch.
I mean, Allen Hurns is what you called a possession receiver, right?
But he made big plays. He made big plays in Miami. Remember, he was catching a lot of bombs. So kind of an all-around guy.
He was a touchdown maker, yeah.
So we'll see where Upshaw goes. He got hurt, which I think the timing stunk because he was starting to come on, and then the playoffs happened. He's out. He didn't play any of the playoff games because he was hurt. I think he would have played based on the trajectory. And who knows, if he makes a couple of plays, he gets a bigger role as the games go on. I don't know his status for spring. I'll try to find out. You may know better than me, Pete, but he's coming back.
I don't know his status for sure, but I think it was a pretty bad foot injury. So I think they might be careful with him.
Yeah, and those are weird. Remember, like Mark Fletcher, we thought he might be out for the year, and he comes back for UF. Some other guys you think are back, and then they're gone. Keontae Scott you think is gone, and he's back. Foot injuries are weird, so I don't even know how to project it. But when he does come back, hopefully he's not too far behind, because I think he's someone that could really help us. And I like how he approaches the game.
Agreed. Hopefully these next guys we'll talk about are ready to hit the ground like these freshmen were last year.
And by the way, real quick, Canes up, down, asking, we're having that 3 p.m. treat with Pete today.
Yes, I'll be going live this afternoon. I will have a special guest as well, so stay tuned for that. Looking forward to it.
A lot of content coming on Canes Insight. It doesn't matter if it's February 5th or right before the playoffs. Like and subscribe to the show. It doesn't stop, man. Canes every day of the week with Canes Insight. Like and subscribe to these young players. All three of those guys we just mentioned, different degrees. Obviously, Malachi Toney leading the nation in catches, but they all contributed last year. All three. Now you have a whole new layer of freshmen. And it's interesting when you look at the way we've recruited receivers. 2022, you signed Colby Young, you signed Isaiah Horton. Isaiah Horton's still playing college football, still getting paid a lot to play college football. He just signed with Texas A&M after playing for Alabama last year. Great evaluation. I think first by Manny's staff and then Mardo to bring him in. He ended up being a good signee, but not for the Canes ultimately. Colby Young, similar. Colby Young might go pro, might be a pro. I don't know if he's going to get drafted, but he'll have a chance to be in a camp or something. He was in that first class. So those guys were both gone from Miami, but they're ended up being good players. 23, you signed Ray Joseph and Robbie Washington, expecting those guys to be that explosive component of your team.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them make it at Miami. Robbie at Coastal Carolina, Ray now at East Carolina. Could have really used one of those guys to hit to make last year's team more explosive. That was a missing element of last year's team. I think those guys not hitting contributed to that, but they're gone. 24, you signed JoJo Trader, Nye Carr, Chance Robinson. All three gone. Just didn't work out. They're competing with older players who are more physically mature and just more consistent. Gave you what you needed for that championship run. JoJo now at NC State with CJ Bailey. I think that's a great fit for him. Chance Robinson also at NC State with CJ Bailey, who they've known since they were kids. I like the fit for both of those guys. I think they could have success. Nye Carr at Wake Forest, who we recently broke down, lost a lot of receivers, a lot of opportunity to play there, but they're all gone. So 22, 23, 24, not a single receiver from those classes is here. So what do you have? You have the transfers, Barkate, Jacobs, and Cam Vaughn. You have the class of 25, which we just went over, Malachi, Josh Moore, and Upshaw, and then all these guys. And they're going to have a chance to play because of all the players that you've lost in the portal. So you can pick whoever you want to start with, but I think you got a lot of talent in this class.
We'll start with, well, before I do that, I just want to say, because I know Canes thing's not a Kevin Beard guy. He says KB only plays and cares about transfers. I was really excited about getting Malachi in the transfer portal, as well as Xavier Estrepo, Jacoby George. Those were huge portal pickups. You know, the leading
Horton
receivers
played more than Brown, which is not
Horton as well. So yeah, man, those were big portal pickups at the time. Hopefully we get some more of those here moving forward. But I'll start with Samorian Wingo, D, because I think the buzz on him was huge when he was here. He was one of the early guys because not everyone came initially. He was here for the Ohio State week. He was Jeremiah Smith in practice. I saw him out there at one of the practices I went to for about 15, 20 minutes out here, just moving around. We always say, well, this guy's supposed to be in high school. He really was still in high school. This was December. This wasn't even January here. So to see him stacking up against those guys was great to see. And talk about a riser throughout his senior year. Became a 5-star at the end of the process there. Ended up as a top 10 wide receiver in the country, pretty consensus. And the upside is through the roof.
Yeah, close to a 5-star player. Like you mentioned, was here earlier. I talked to somebody in the middle of the playoffs when he had already arrived. And I was asking, how do we look out there? What's the whole deal? Not even asking about the freshman. And the source goes, I'm glad we don't have to play some more in Wingo next week because this guy's killing us. So he's making an early impression. Basketball player. His basketball highlights were good, Pete. I know you're a big hoop guy. Watching his basketball highlights, he actually was a good player. Some of these football guys, you always want them to play basketball, at least I do, and you do too. But sometimes they're just rebounders, right? Like you'll see their highlights and it's like, 2 points, 5 steals, right? They're just kind of football players out there. This dude's a real basketball player. He's a guard. He can handle, he can pass, he can score. Like he is a nice player. Mm-hmm. And he brings that smoothness to the football field. Highly productive up there in St. Augustine. How I mentioned with Cooper Barkate, how he catches the ball with his hands, no fear, keeps going. I think Wingo's the same way. Not a guy who's going to necessarily tear up the track, although he does have some track background, but he plays so much faster because catches the ball with his hands, total confidence, and keeps going. Breaks tackles, good core strength, has those ball skills from the basketball background, highly productive 2 years in a row, strong body. Like I mentioned, I think Miami knew he was good when they got him and they started recruiting as a junior. He was better than they thought as a senior. And I think the ranking rise reflected that. Miami, their opinion of him rose with those rankings, not because of the rankings, but just because, hey, we knew this guy was good. We wanted him, but seeing him as a senior, wow, this guy is a real high level dude.
And people in the area too speak very, very highly of him. Right. So I'm bullish on him. Now, crowded room. You understand, I think one or two of these guys that we're talking about here will end up getting in the mix, and being, I don't know that anyone's Malachi Toney in terms of that production. That'd be pretty improbable there. But a Wingo, we'll talk about a Milan Paris here next, who's a big body type, and the tools are there for him to play early. Now, whether or not he does, we'll see. But we'll talk about Milan Paris here, another guy who rose big time throughout the season.
Guy you're a big fan of. I know you've talked about him, just having seen him around campus and his size, from Akron, Ohio, hometown of our boy Stoney. Shout out to him and the Table of Knowledge there at Riviera Country Club. But he's a multi-sport guy too. He plays basketball. He's got great speed. His verified measurables were outstanding. I think it was in the high 4.4s on the lasers for a big receiver. That's moving. Also jumped very high. Somebody who I think the measurables and the production really started matching as a senior. Had a great senior year. Miami, broken record. We talked about this. All the guys they brought in had great senior years. That's why they kept bringing in these guys. By the way, shout out to Joey at the You Heard podcast, one of the best in the business. Check those guys out if you haven't already. But Milan Paris, the production started matching the body, I think, and the athleticism as a senior. And he had a great year, downfield threat. One thing you hear about him, yes, measurables, all that. He is one of the best blocking receivers in this class. And you look at CJ Daniels, you look at Malachi, you look at Keelan Marion, those guys were blocking their butts off. It was a big part of the culture that Miami had. Every time I heard another coach, whether it was an opposing coach playing us or one of these anonymous coaches giving quotes to The Athletic or something like that, or one of the analysts watching the game on ESPN, anytime a football person would watch Miami's film, they would bring up the receiving blocking like really fast. Like, hey, man, these guys have a great culture. These receivers block in a way that you don't see often. You don't want to lose that because that's such a key part. Not just, look, it allows you to break big runs, all those things, helps you on screens. But the culture part of it is huge. It is one of the most telltale signs of culture when your receivers block, when your big guys run to the ball. Paris already does that in high school. So a guy like that, I have faith that they're going to be able to come in, work on the details. And he's a tall, lanky guy, route running, all those kind of things are going to be the things he has to improve. But when you already care enough to block in high school, that tells me you're going to work on your details once you get here in Green Tree. So I'm excited about what he can become.
Yeah, I think with those tall guys, D, because I think he had a little muscular deal when he was practicing here. I think those tall guys, 6'5", 6'6",
yeah,
track sort of strider. Those guys, you need to make sure their core strength is where it needs to be, and just like they're finely tuned machines. These guys who are big and moving like that. So I think just getting him up to par strength wise will go a long way in his development as well.
Yeah, 100%. All these guys really.
He's gonna. I feel like he'll look way bigger because his frame is naturally. He doesn't have like narrow shoulders, right, from what I've seen. So he should fill out very nicely.
No doubt about it. Trey M saying those Pete Carr videos during spring practice going to hit like crack. Can't wait for those as well. Talk about physically filling out. One of the guys I think that fits that bill, Vance Spafford. I heard Tom Lemming talking about Vance Spafford. Tom Lemming, like the ultimate old school recruiting analyst. I saw him on social media and he was talking about Vance Spafford. He said he looks like a surfer kid. And I thought that was a great description of what this guy looks like. He does look like a surfer kid. California, from Mission Viejo, California, same place as Cooper Barkate. I think they have a relationship. I see him on Instagram commenting on each other's posts. So that's a good mentor potential relationship for Cooper Barkate. But Vance Spafford, I remember meeting him in spring, shaking his hands. Hey, this is Vance Spafford. Really, really skinny. Not short, but not tall. Probably 5'10". 5'11", maybe, kind of has like a little slouch. And you look at this guy and he looks like a surfer, just like a kid that's on a computer. Like you don't see, and not just because of his skin color, like the way he's just not the biggest, strongest guy. So you're like, interesting that we're recruiting this guy. Then you see him play football. The guy, first of all, runs track and is a 10.6 guy, legit, ran a 4.35 laser at one of these camps, which I think was the Future 50, which is like the best young players in the country. He had the fastest time. Then you see him on the field. I saw him at the OT Sevens, which is like the best 7-on-7 tournament in the country, cooking Raw Miami, cooking all these Southern defensive backfields. I mean, badly beating them, open by a mile. Then you watch him on film, highly productive, hands catcher, great route running, super fast. He is really, really, really talented. He reminds me, Pete, of Philip Dorsett, because Philip Dorsett was a 4.3 guy legit. I think Vance Spafford, 4.3 guy legit. about the same size. Dorsett was a little stronger. I think Vance will get there with the weight room. Really good route runner, really good hands. Dorsett was never the guy at 4'3" that you threw him a lot of screens or he was returning punts, which Spafford isn't really either. He's not the best run after catch guy for how fast he is. Dorsett was the same way. When you're talking about playing receiver with that speed and actually knowing how to play receiver, set guys up, Dorsett was a first-round pick, and he was deadly on those deep balls because of how he ran routes, how he tracked the ball, just being a natural receiver that happened to run a 4.3. I see a lot of that with a Vance Spafford, Pete. I don't know what your take is on Vance.
Yeah, the size concerns me, I have to say, in terms of like he hasn't been healthy. So that is the thing with him that's going to be the determining factor, really. And then once he does put the weight on, D, is he moving the same? That's always the give and take with a guy who's not the biggest in the world. Can he put on enough muscle and protective padding, I'll call it, to withstand some of the stuff he's going to see and some of the hits he's going to take naturally playing that position? And then is it still the same juice once he puts it on? You know, we'll see what happens. I have a hard time seeing him getting on the field much this year, but that's my early guess without having seen. He may go out there maybe better than Malachi Toney. I may be completely wrong, but right now I'm in wait and see mode.
Yeah, it's going to be about the body and the body armor. I will say in terms of the skill set, I think he could play early because he's not a track guy playing football. He's a real receiver. He can run routes. He can set guys up. He can find the football. He's good hands. He's tough too for his size. I think all of that will be pretty ready to play. It will come down to, like you said, physically being ready to deal with this. And then the last guy in the room, Pete, Tyrod Evans, I think definitely a red shirt for him. Big, fast guy out of Charlotte, was committed to Tennessee. Miami went and got him. He was a priority. Deep threat was, I believe his junior year, he was number one in the entire On3 database in terms of yards per catch. So he's a guy that likes to get downfield long, kind of that Tommy Streeter type. That's a long guy, but he likes to go downfield as opposed to just mossing guys and being that short, you know, the red zone type big guy. He's more of a speed big guy. But raw, senior year was kind of up and down, dealt with some injuries. I think this is a guy, maybe Isaiah Horton would be somewhat of a comp in terms of not the player, but just the way that it was a slow burn. Horton might have been a little further along, but I think just kind of build this guy up, let him get stronger. I've seen him walking around. He's a huge guy. Let him just continue to work, and he doesn't need to play right away with the depth we have.
Yeah, and I like his outlook long term. I just don't know that we, like you just said, I'd rather him use this year to refine his game and really take the next step there, D, because the physicals are there with him, right? And he could be someone that, you know, after this spring practice, you say, well, maybe he's a little bit more ready than we thought he was, and he can work himself into the mix, play a 2 or 3 games here or there to kind of, because you can play games and still take a red shirt, right? Get his feet wet. But he was someone that was wanted by the SEC, right? He was wanted by Tennessee. They wanted to keep him in the class at that point. So I'm betting on the physical traits there.
100%, man. I'm excited to see. You need a guy that's going to not mind taking a red shirt. I think that's what he is, because you just have too many guys that are competing to play. I think he's the one you store away, and then you see what he can become. Kevin Beard, we've been defending with his track record. I think it is a strong track record, but that's the kind of guy you work with and get better and develop. So we'll see what happens there. Pete, very, very excited about this next segment. First, while you're setting it up, got to talk about our friends at the Miami Hurricane Team Store, MiamiHTS.com, right there across the street from the University of Miami, next to the Thesis Hotel, also at MiamiHTS.com. Get your Canes basketball gear. Get all the commemorative stuff from the playoff run. Also Canes baseball, which we're about to talk about right now. Get those Old English Evs, all the different kinds of styles. They're at the Miami Hurricane Team Store, MiamiHTS.com. Promo code INSIGHT20 will get you 20% off your first item. And I also want to thank the people that are bringing this next segment to us, and that is Sala, Astorita, and Cox. Which is, you saw Jim Sala on the video we did about the Duke lawsuit. That was actually one of our biggest videos ever, Pete. I think he did.
I call him the GOAT, man. I don't even refer to him as his name, man. That's just the GOAT right there.
Yeah, he's the man. So,
and I don't throw that term around lightly, man.
I know you don't. In fact, I rarely hear you say that about anybody. But he's definitely got the numbers to back it up, because Jim Sala came on he broke the Duke case down, and what happened ended up being exactly what he said. Like we talked about it. What we predicted was exactly what happened in terms of how the thing got resolved. That's just a flavor, a slice of what he can do as an attorney, one of the top, along with this whole team, white collar attorneys in the country, as well as what they do as for whistleblowers. If you have something you want to blow the whistle on with your company, talk to him, man. He's one of the best. Boutique law firm offers his clients in-depth experience in the areas of securities enforcement, white-collar crime, securities regulation, securities arbitration, securities litigation, and, of course, whistleblower litigation. They got their office there in Boca, New Jersey, and on Wall Street. The best in the business when it comes to doing what he does. Former SEC attorney Jim Sala, Asteroid and Cox. Call now, 561-989-9080, salalaw.com. He's one of the best friends Canes baseball has. And I'm fired up about this next segment, Pete. Again, brought to you by Sala, Asteroid and Cox. There's going to be So it's going to be a weekly show. Again, super fired up about it. Brought to you by our friend Jim Sala, Asteroid and Cox. And it's going to be the J.D. Arteaga show, one of the best players in Miami history, now Miami's coach. Huge improvement last year, heading for an awesome season this year. We are so excited to talk to him every single week. I'm fired about baseball season. I'll be at the light every single chance I get. Got Fan Fest on Saturday. Season starting next week. It is just an awesome time, and we're going to be covering it here on Canes Insight. So without further ado, Pete, you ready?
Yep, ready.
We got the J.D. Arteaga show. So check it out. Enjoy. We do it every week. All right, we are here with a very, very special guest for what's going to be a weekly deal here, the JT Arteaga show, brought to you by Sal Astorita and Cox, the man himself, Coach JD Arteaga. How we doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me. Finally on your show. Been a big fan for a long time and finally get to be on the show.
I don't believe that, but I appreciate it. And I'm fired up, man. This is going to be awesome. And, you know, there's a lot of people listening that maybe weren't along for the ride and they missed out on a lot, but those who maybe are newer to Canes baseball, before we get into the season coming up, I want to just recap a little bit of the journey to get here, where you take over the job. Portal's basically picked clean by the time you take the job. So first year, you know, you're getting your feet under you, trying to get this thing going. Next year, most portal additions in the country, 9-win improvement, basically an inning away from Omaha. So that team last year, some of them are still here, but just that team last year, what did they mean to getting this program back on track and getting your operation fully underway?
I mean, you said it right there. I mean, it kind of got us back on track. I don't want to say back on the map, but back in the you know, at the level we're accustomed to being in, you know, year in and year out. So, as good of a ending to that season was last year, still we fell short of our goal, and it doesn't matter what our roster looks like. Our goal here is always Omaha. You know, being one run away, one inning away, however you want to call it, it's definitely a step in the right direction. But we still got a big step to make. You know, we got a good core back offensively. Pitching, we lost a lot of quality innings that we got to figure out how to replace. I think we have good arms. It's just a matter of you know, who's going to fit where, and it's always tough when we compete against yourself. Is our hitting that good? Is our pitching bad? You know what I mean? So you never go home as a head coach happy. You're either concerned about the hitting or the pitching or the defense, because this never evens out during practice. So that team last year was an incredible group of guys that maybe not the most talented, but just an incredible group of character and makeup and the type of player that we want around here.
Definitely fun to watch. So, JD, I know you're a football fan. I saw you at the Cal game last year, traveled all the way out there with your family to watch that awesome game. But one thing watching the football team is you see the first team, you see the second team, and the physicality, just the size and athleticism of the players that you're looking at in practice every year takes a noticeable jump. And then before you know it, you're like, man, this team can bully any team in the SEC and really compete at that championship level. Just from the stands, and I've been out to a couple of your practices this year, it seems like that transition is happening where you're getting every freshman class, every portal class more physical and more athletic. Is that something that's a conscious effort, and are you seeing that with your team?
It is. It's a conscious effort. I think a combination of the type of players that we're recruiting and the work that Nick Soto's doing in the weight room. It's unbelievable. And again, like you said, you see it on the field. You see the product on the field. But baseball's a different sport. It's not like, you got to be a certain size to play offensive line. You got to be a certain height to play basketball. Baseball, in all shapes, sizes, and packages, it's a good player is a good player. But it does help. Physicality does help, and it allows you to get away with certain things that you may not be able to if you're not strong and fast and as physical as some of our guys are right now. So it was definitely, something we're looking for and going after. But still, it's, we have a stat in baseball. It's a CHP. Can he play? Right. So it doesn't matter how fast they are in this and how hard they throw. Can he play? Can he pitch? And ultimately, that's the one grade that's more important than any other grade. You look at a guy like Altuve in the big leagues. He has no business doing what he does at his stature and his height, but he can play. He can really play the game, And going back through our great seasons we've had and great players, a guy like Jamal Weeks, he could have gone to the Little League World Series, and they might have not asked him for an ID. Great player and play in the big league. So baseball's a little different, but yes, absolutely, we are looking to get more physical and still looking for the best players possible.
And one guy who passes the size test and the CHP test, your third baseman, first team All-America, Daniel Cuvée. So for those who have not seen him play and or listen to this and they're like, man, maybe I want to take my family out to the light. You've seen it all. You've played obviously one of the greatest players in the program history. You've been around a long time. Why is this guy the type of player that you take your family, you buy a ticket, and you go out to see?
He does things offensively that guys can't do, and actually one of the biggest problems we have with Cuvée is he tries to teach some of the other hitters what he does at the plate, and I tell him, hey man, like no one can do that. You're different. Don't try to get them to do what you're doing because they're not going to have success doing that. But he's actually a student of the game. He really studies the game. He's a guy that he asks really good questions, and coaching him, he's a player that you have to explain to him why you're doing things, and then he's very coachable. But he has some really good questions sometimes that you got to answer. Hey, now's not the time. Just do it. Trust me, and then we'll talk about it later. But he really studies the game. He understands what pitchers are trying to do to him, and he understands his strengths and weaknesses. And he'll take some pitches. I'm like, hey man, why didn't you swing that? I can't hit that pitch. And that's when he's going good. Early in the season last year when we call it struggling because he wasn't hitting home runs and slugging, but he was still. I don't think his average ever dropped below 330. But he was struggling because he was swinging at some pitches early in counts. It seemed like every at bat was 0-2, 1-2, and he was on defensive mode and still getting his hits. But once he started laying off some of those pitches and figuring out what guys were doing to him, then he just kind of took off and really put up all those power numbers. He put them up in a little more than half the season. If you really look at his season, how it went last year, and just before the halfway point is when he started. He took off with that, so that makes those numbers even that more impressive.
Obviously watching you guys all of last year, and then during the tournament, I think D1 Baseball did a anonymous coaching survey about teams that had played you and talked about what your lineup was like to go against. And a lot of people said, top heavy, right? They had a lot of the meat up front, but incredible unselfishness throughout the lineup, the situational hitting. That's what made you guys tough and allowed you guys to have success from the opposing coaching viewpoint. Yeah. Now you have a lot more firepower on paper with what you've done in the portal, with what you've done recruiting, just your own development. Does the strategy shift a little bit with the personnel shifting? How does that change how you approach the game?
I hope not. I mean, the unselfishness and situational hitting is still baseball. I mean, you still got to do those things. And yes, we have the ability to score more runs and hit more home runs and things like that. But you still got to play the game. You still got to pitch. You got to play defense. And good pitching, you're not going to put up 8-9 runs against good pitching. You're just not. So it's going to come down to those little things. So it's great to hear when your peers are giving you credit like that, like last year. That's exactly what you want to hear, what you want to do. So hopefully these guys with the talent that we have, they continue with that approach. It should be a relentless lineup, 1 through 9. It's not going to be top heavy. I mean, if you look at it, you got the possibility of a guy hitting 7th or 8th that, last season hit, 14 home runs and still 32 bases in 330, hitting 7th or 8th in the lineup. So it's going to definitely be a deep lineup, a lineup that pitchers can't relax, can't take a break because anyone could hurt you 1 through 9. So it's exciting. It's exciting to write the lineup out.
Now, I haven't been around as many baseball coaches as you have, but the ones I have been around, when they have problems at the catcher position, they can't sleep. It's like one of those things where it just messes with their mind. You this year, you must be sleeping a little bit better because you got 3 guys. It seems like that you feel comfortable in a game? And of course, so with Jared Saltamacchia helping him out, so just the whole. What do you see at the catcher position now with this squad?
Well, we've got obviously the three new additions, but Alex Sosa coming in with the experience that he that he has, playing the College World Series, 2-year starter at NC State, and offensively he's a perfect guy to kind of hit behind Cuvea, being a left-handed hitter, having a right-left combination in the middle to protect him and do damage at the same time is great. But the experience behind the play that he has is immeasurable, especially when you have a young kid like Alonso Alvarez, which I mean, he's special. He's going to be a special player, and he's a draft eligible sophomore. And if he's not a top 2-3 round pick last year, then we failed him, because he's got all the physical ability to be a big leaguer and be a great player for us, and switch hitter, can really throw, athletic. And then you got Hugus as another guy, another option back there with 5th-year player. Really can catch and throw. That's his strength, but just brings a lot of experience behind the plate. So those two older guys, and then a young talent like Alvarez, man, it's a special room, as they say in football. It's that catching room is a good one, and Saltamacchia, the experience he brings as well, and it's definitely a strength of ours.
Pitching's interesting because I feel like their first year you kind of knew who your top three were. Last year it was a journey, right, throughout the season, not expecting the two young guys that you had with Darius and of course Siscard doing what they did. This year you have some talent coming back, but you also have people coming back from injuries, different timelines. The starting pitching in particular, how do you see that shaking out this year?
Well, it's, I think you got Siscard and Darius that both had significant starts last year. Rob Evans has made, huge jumps. He's finally pitching the way we thought he would last year, but he was coming off of injury last year. You just never know that first year back from injury. So, those three guys have been really good. Again, you feel great with Siscar. You kind of know what Tate's going to do, and Rob Evans. So we feel good about that. There's still some other guys there, some other spots, especially early in the season. I think we played something like 13 games in 16 days to start the season, or something like that. I don't know who did the schedule, but they didn't do a great job. But we're gonna need some other guys. Lachi's made some good strides there, and throwing pitching right now, and so we feel good again about probably Friday night and the closer row. We just got to fill in the spots in between. So
it's hard to miss when you're there. Menendez and Robert, just seeing them not ready to throw yet. Obviously, Nick Robert, we saw him his freshman year, probably the best reliever you had as a true freshman last year, starting before his injury. And then Menendez coming from UF, where he was just really electric before his injury. Do you see those guys coming out of the pen at first? Do you see them as long-term starters? Like, what's the plan with those guys for this season?
I mean, I don't know the exact plan yet, but I do know we're going to be a completely different team late March. When those two guys, you add two arms like that, man, it just, whether they're starting or in the bullpen or how we use them, we'll see. We don't know yet, but we got to be smart about it. We can't overdo it, early on. You still want to be at your best, come, late May, early June, or through June. But they're definitely going to play a big role, and they're going to change the whole look of the pitching staff.
How about for you, just entering year three? Two very different years, both in terms of the results and just kind of what you were dealing with in terms of like taking over the team after the portal. Like we said, having that full portal where you imported a whole new team pretty much, which is, I don't know if you learned that coming up, in your coaching life to do that. That's kind of unusual to have a whole new team imported with veterans. And then now with a little bit more expectations, just how's it been for you, this journey? Because it hasn't been straightforward.
No, but it never is, right? I mean, that's the fun part, is not knowing the twists and turns, and it's like a roller coaster, and you're all over the place. But I think the journey is the fun part, and I'm definitely a better, prepared for the job, and I'm gonna continue to get better. I think we're all gonna get better. If we don't, we're getting worse. So I just you're right. It's 2 different years, and last year's team, it was exactly what we were looking for, right? We weren't going to we weren't in a position yet to acquire high-end talent yet in the portal, but we made an emphasis on finding the right guys, not just the best guys, and we absolutely did that. We didn't miss on too many of the guys that year, So you never know if you miss or not until the season rolls around. And everybody's, it's a great atmosphere right now, but come next Friday when the first lineup is posted, there's going to be some guys that aren't in the lineup and might not be happy, and that's always the challenge from the head coaching position. But definitely more prepared for it, and I'm going to continue to get better and kind of see things coming before they get here. and deal with them that way. But that's the fun part. The fun part is the unknown and all the twists and turns that come with this game of baseball.
Speaking of good problems, you had one of the best shortstops in the ACC last year, Jake Ogden. You bring in Van Sheehan, who can play shortstop, can play third, can play second. I guess Jake can as well. I know he hit a bomb yesterday, Sheehan. So Brandon Nagodi, we know he's a very talented guy coming from a great high school in Belen Jesuit. You got a lot of talent at shortstop, obviously second base open now with Dorian gone. How do you manage that to make sure everybody's contributing, everybody's happy, and you're getting all that talent on the field?
Well, it's when you talk again, Sheehan is fits the mold of what we're looking for, right? And he's been through a lot in his life. He has some medical issues early on, which is why he redshirted. He's a third year or fourth year junior this year. Where we play him, they're gonna be okay with it, and they kind of have that team first mentality. You look at a guy like Ogden. I mean, he played shortstop, played first base, he had leadoff, he had cleanup, he had third. No matter where you put him, he's gonna be a good player for you. And that's kind of the mentality. And the more you talk about the portal guys and you guys you brought in, I think our retention, the players that we retained from last year, is the biggest difference and why we have so much depth in Ogden, in Williams, in Galvin. Those guys were huge for us last year, and having those guys back, and again, building off of what we did last year, which this day and age in college sports might be the toughest thing. You get caught up really, building a roster every year instead of building a program. But when you can retain guys like that were in the core of your lineup and the core of your locker room, that's huge for us. And that's really the retaining of those three guys that are making the biggest difference right now.
Yeah, great guys. I've had an opportunity to meet the families, just doing the interviews I do for University of Miami with Storm Session. Just great young men, people you feel good bringing your kid to say, hey, this is how you play the game. This is how you run the bases. This is how you do things. So FanFest is on Saturday. Going to have a lot of Canes fans in attendance. Season kicks off next week. For those listening, why should they come out to the light and check out this ball club?
It's still the best ticket in town. I mean, as far as for a Friday, Saturday night to come out for, 3 hours and just with the family and the kids and how close you get to the players and interact with them and just the atmosphere. It's just, I mean, I know myself growing up, and I say this all the time, I was a fan of the University of Miami before I played here, before I worked here. I mean, I remember those nights fondly, man. I remember those nights more than doing anything else, with the family. Those family outings is a special place to be on a Friday, Saturday night, or Sunday afternoon before the weather gets, hotter. But it's just a great place to be and something that the kids are going to talk about and remember for a very long time.
JD, thank you for doing this. I am so excited to be doing this every single week. Excited for the season to start, man. Appreciate you, and I will see you at the light.
Thank you. We gotta get some baseball helmets behind you, man. It's baseball season now.
Let's go. You're right.
Football's behind us.
We'll get the old M out there. We'll work on it. Maybe get a nice Adrian Lorenzo painting like you got there in the back. How about that?
We can do that. We'll figure something out here.
Appreciate you.
All right, D-Money. Thanks, man.
All right, Canes fans, I will be back at 3 p.m. Bringing you guys the Canes Insight PM episode. Again, going to have a special guest. Stay tuned for that. We'll be very high school football oriented, high school South Florida, and then how this last season really affects everything moving forward in terms of the perception of this program. So stay tuned for that. Hope you guys enjoyed that interview there with JD Arteaga, D-Money doing a great job with that, and expect that every week here on Canes Insight. So thank you all for watching today's show. If you missed us earlier, we also did a little bit of an update on some offers that have gone out recently. So take a look at that video. Stay tuned for this afternoon, Canes Insight PM at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Go Canes.